Welcome to another episode of Season 2 of the Panjwai podcast. As always, you can find our episodes on all podcast platforms, as well as YouTube and Facebook for the video episodes. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button on your platform of choice, and if you enjoy what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a nice 5-star review.
If you want to support the podcast financially, we've set up a few ways for you to do so this season. You can become a patron by hopping over to patreon.com/thepanjwai podcast and sign up for a small monthly donation. If you want to make a one-time donation, you can find us on Venmo at the Panjwai Podcast. And last but not least, we've got a small selection of merchandise in our store. So if you head over to thepanjwaipodcast.com and click on the store tab, you'll see stickers and other merchandise, and who knows what might come down the pipeline. So remember, on all three platforms, that's the Panjwai Podcast, PANJWAI Podcast. Thank you.
I know when I switch to flights, the difference in quality of the fabric between like the regular like ACUs and the flight ACUs is like night and day.
Oh yeah.
They're just complete garbage, just trash. But anyway, we are here talking about uniforms, but we're actually here to talk to our guest, Jon Orebaugh, who's currently a Sergeant First Class.
Yes.
Awesome. Sergeant First Class Jon Orebaugh. Many of you may find this interesting. Jon Orebaugh is not an infantryman. He's not a Cav Scout. He's not a tanker. He's not a pilot. He's not a Special Forces operator. What is your MOS, John?
Wheeled vehicle mechanic.
Wheeled vehicle mechanic. And this wheeled vehicle mechanic has more combat experience than most of you listening. Shut the fuck up and listen to him.
This wheeled vehicle mechanic has more combat under his belt than pretty much everybody E6 and below in the infantry right now. Most infantrymen of John's generation as well. Really.
Yeah,
I'm going to say it.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, John, it's a true privilege to have you on. We've been looking forward to it for a while. Mm-hmm. So, we always kind of open these things up is kind of give you an opportunity to talk about why you joined the Army, why you chose to become a wheeled vehicle mechanic, and kind of briefly the turn of events that led to you coming to Sperwan Ghar.
Yeah, so, I joined the Army in 2004. I had just graduated technical college. I had got a master welder's degree and finished that and wasn't married, didn't have no bills, no kids. So I was like, well, shoot, let's go do something else. So I decided to go join the Army. And, so joined the Army in early 2004, went to basic training in May 2004. That was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And went to AIT. Relaxing Jackson, yep. Yep. It was pretty easy. You just had to try.
Yeah.
But after that, went to AIT in Maryland at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. After Aberdeen, my first duty station was Fort Lewis, Washington, with 123 Infantry Tomahawks.
Who would have thought?
Ironic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who would have thought you'd end up right back with them?
Sure did. Well, I didn't want to leave them when I had to leave them, but I guess it worked out with them. I went to Iraq with them in 2006, 2007. After that deployment, I got stationed in Korea. And after Korea, ended up at Fort Stewart, Georgia. 3rd ID.
Good old Fort Stewart.
Good old Fort Stewart, yep.
The old broken TV.
Old broken TV, yep. Then,
now, why did you choose wheeled vehicle mechanic?
Well, I had always liked fixing things. Really, all my knowledge before the military was all welding. I went to a couple of welding schools at high school, then Tulsa Welding School. Then I was good at fixing things. I just didn't know how to explain, or I didn't really know the name of the part I was replacing. I just knew what it did.
Right.
So, and when I joined the Army, I wanted to do something different than welding. So it's like, hey, let's go be a mechanic. I like doing that. And it all started
Fair
from
enough.
there.
Little did you know.
Little did I know. Yep. Yeah.
When you joined up as a wheel vehicle mechanic, did you ever think you'd end up somewhere as crazy as Panjwai?
No. So I mean, it's a support MOS. So I didn't really think I'd ever see any combat anywhere. But I learned really quickly that when the combat MOSs need people, the first place they look is the motor pool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
It's
even
true.
in Iraq, I was a wrecker operator. So anytime a vehicle got blown up or anything like that, I had to go out and recover that vehicle. So that's what got me in combat in Iraq. Then Afghanistan, being 2012, I didn't think anything big was going to be going on. I thought it was going to be a pretty easy, laid-back deployment.
Right.
And, yeah, we all know how that went.
Now, to be fair, you probably could have been a little bit more laid back, but you had this tendency of volunteering to come out with us.
You
Yeah,
did.
so
That's true.
I've always been the person that, I'm not going to sit back on the COP and, live the good life while all y'all guys are going out and just, getting tore up pretty bad. So I'm one of them that, if whatever I can bring to the fight, I'm going to bring it. I mean, that's just, one, that's my job, and two, that's just who I am.
Yeah, man.
Well-
I remember on our very first firefight, you went on that patrol with us, and we ended up getting into a good, thick, bushy firefight, and somehow at the end of the thing, you and I ended up next to each other, and I just remember looking at you and be like, well, that was it. And you were just like, yeah, man. Like you were there,
Well-
100% committed. Our mechanic was out there slinging lead with us. Like, who would have thought that would ever happen?
Well, prior to that firefight, I had been in firefights and convoys, but I had never been on a dismounted firefight. So that was the first for me. And,
Yeah.
it was really different because, you don't really have nothing to hide behind. And,
Naked out there.
yeah.
No
and,
up armor.
when it's your first time, you're kind of slow to get your situational awareness and all that. So, I remember, the firefight starts, everybody on both sides of me falls down for cover, and I'm still standing up like, oh shit. Yeah. So, I dove down and I was towards the back. I didn't know what we were shooting at, but, I was going to shoot at something. So there was this house. There's this house in front of me. Looked like it hasn't been lived in probably 100 years. But let me tell you what, man, I put 2 magazines in that window. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
But that was the
America.
house we were getting shot at from, though. It
No,
had
I
to
don't
have
think
been.
this one was. No, this was on back
no?
a little bit. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't nobody there.
Well, that was the name of the game in Panjwai, man. It's like,
yeah.
whatever looks like it could be a fighting position, dump a magazine into it, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're fighting ghosts there.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
Man, that is the title of this episode. That is a great statement. Fighting ghosts.
Fighting
we really
ghost.
Yep.
Yeah. That's right, man. I mean, anytime you start taking contact, you start thinking, where could they possibly be?
Yeah. You never seen them.
Well, you could kind of hear like general cardinal directions.
You could
like,
get a general idea.
that way.
They're probably in that tree line and in that 50-meter
Right.
stretch
This-
of road. Yeah.
this sector of fire.
Yeah.
But really, you just look at where everybody else is shooting, and you shoot the same way.
Exactly. Yep. You might not hit them, but you'll scare them.
That's the
right.
name of the game. It's all suppressive fire.
Yep.
We're not firing
sure.
wildly. We're suppressing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, it says a lot, man, that you were like at that time, early in the deployment, we had plenty of people. We had tons of people that we were like, yeah, dude, let's bring the mechanic. Let's do it. Like, you had to have instilled a lot of confidence in not only our platoon level leadership, but company level leadership for them to even consider that. So
Yeah.
kudos to you because you made a quick impression.
Yeah. Well, just there to do my job.
So yeah, you went out there, scurried with us early on, but you did a lot of work on that deployment that actually we hadn't even really noticed. And there's no offense there. It's just we were off doing our thing, and everyone's off doing their own thing. But as a qualified bulldozer operator, it seemed like you kind of got whored out a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, really, it all started with just going out with one of our 3 platoons. Then after that, the ODA teams would come ask for support. So I would take the bulldozer out and help them build checkpoints. And every now and then, the engineers and EOD would come and get me so I could help them, uncover some things.
Sure. And I mean, in addition to all the random stuff that you did on the COP, those checkpoints were actually a pretty big thing. And early on, one of the very first things we did on that deployment was help the ODA build a checkpoint on Route Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And you were there helping out with that, right?
Yeah, so I want to say by the time we got, kind of settled in Sperwan Ghar and was out doing missions, they were kind of halfway done with that first checkpoint, if I remember correctly. So really, I mean, when we started helping them, it was just to get the second roll of HESCOs filled in, then gravel, then the Connex put in.
Right. And for civilians that are watching, the HESCOs, and we'll show a picture up here, it's basically a big basket. It's probably the size of 3 or 4 50-gallon drums. And it's just like this big wire and canvas basket you pour dirt and rocks into. And essentially it makes one part of the wall of a base. So you can string these things all together and create a wall. You can create buildings out of them, theoretically. And because they're just filled with dirt, they're fairly impenetrable. Anything up to a massive explosion. So we would use those to build these little bases and outposts. We use them as the outer walls for bases or any number of uses. But filling them, putting them together and filling them was a pretty time-consuming exercise, unless you had heavy equipment, which John was able to provide.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, having some heavy equipment will really make your life a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah.
And,
between those poor guys up in the corn gar filling those things by hand.
Ooh, I know, man.
Just
I couldn't imagine that.
Brutal. Fuck that.
It's like you're digging the hole next to the HESCO to fill the hole, the HESCO with dirt. Oh, so mad props to our buddies in the Korengal. They did it. But so what was so you said you were helping out with the ODA at that checkpoint, bringing in gravel, kind of filling out. What else happened?
Yeah, so that checkpoint was just, it should have took about a week to build. And gosh, I think 3 weeks into it, it might have been longer than that. We were still trying to build this checkpoint. Every day we just got harassing gunfire all day, every day. And man, it was just, they did not like us building that checkpoint there. So
no, they very much hated that checkpoint its entire existence.
They did not like it. But they made us really work to put that checkpoint up. After we had the HESCOs put up, we were supposed to went out one day. Well, we did go out one day, and we put a 20-foot Connex inside that checkpoint, so the Afghan police would have some shelter. Well, that night they were supposed to stay out there that night and guard it, because we were going to come out the next morning to spread some gravel inside that checkpoint.
Like as the floor or or whatever of the base, right?
Yeah. So pretty much when it rains, they wouldn't be all muddy, and they would have some good ground to walk and operate on. So so we got the Connex put out there, and we kind of put it in the corner of that checkpoint, but we left about a 5-foot gap, between the Connex and the HESCO barriers, so people could walk around that Connex.
Right, yeah.
Yep. So we came out there next morning, started spreading gravel, and I had McGuigan out there, Specialist McGuigan, which is a mechanic, and we had brought the Bobcat out to spread that gravel. And I think I had walked to the truck to refill my camel pack with water, and all of a sudden this huge explosion just went off. I mean, it rattled the ground, it rattled the vehicles, and I mean, first thing I could think of is, dang, did a mortar come in? But usually I've been in mortar attacks, and usually you can hear a mortar coming in.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear nothing like that. And I looked back, and the entrance of that checkpoint, you could just see dust just rolling out of it, almost like a sandstorm coming in. That's what it looked like.
Sure.
So I run in there, and McGuigan, he was out of the Bobcat, and asked him, I was like, "Are you okay?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." But he just had, his eyes were this big around.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was all right. Then I ran over to the other entrance of that checkpoint, and by this time, the SF guys, they were already suppressing fire. They were doing their thing, and I looked over to my left, and that's where I seen somebody doing something. I didn't know what it was, but when I looked over there, that's when I noticed somebody had stepped on a pressure plate IED inside that checkpoint. So yeah, come to find out that the Afghan police didn't guard the checkpoint that night, and the Taliban snuck in, and they put a IED in between that Connex and the HESCO barriers.
And it was the Special Forces ODA team captain who stepped on it, right?
Yep, it was their commander. Yep. So, that was just a start to a rough day. And so the medevac came in. They flew him out. EOD came in, swept inside that checkpoint. Didn't find anything. Told us, all clear. You can get back to work. And see here, I don't know. We all got back to work, and on the side of the Connex, in between the Connex and the HESCOs, we'd all been standing around just kind of watching McGuigan spread gravel, and we had been standing all in the area for good 15-20 minutes. We even took our gear off and laid it down in that area so we could take a break. And McGuigan comes with a Bobcat bucket. He moves some gravel out of the way, and right where we were standing, pulls up another pressure plate with the bucket. And of course, we all take off running.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wasn't going to hang out in that area no more. But yeah, there was another IED right there. We were standing all over it. I guess just the way the gravel was laid down, it was supporting our weight, so we didn't set it off.
Jeez, man.
That's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, EOD came out. They blew that one. Said it was good to go again.
Did you
sure
trust
this
him
time, guys?
Are you sure? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those two are the only two that we found, so. But yeah, it was just things like that. Just, man, it made that checkpoint a pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it never stopped being a pain in the butt. That checkpoint
Never stopped.
was a thorn in the side the whole time.
No,
And you could set the clock by
every
it.
single day. Yep.
Every single night. Right after evening prayer. You'd be like, and...
Yeah. Gunfire.
Now we were lucky it wasn't at us. They did it all down there.
Yeah.
So every once in a while a stray bullet would come up towards us, but for the most part it was all up there. But
every once in a while when a stray bullet would come in, it always landed in the motor pool. where the mechanics work.
Yeah.
Somehow, like, I feel like it's a common thing for you guys to be sitting around smoking and joking, and whack, here come a freaking bullet, hit the HESCO above you.
We were living in connexes, and we had HESCO barriers in front of them, and them HESCO barriers were just full of bullet holes where rounds had came in and hit them HESCOs. We even found a bullet in one of the airlines of one of our trucks.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So,
well, I remember they made a rule saying that we could not go down to the motor pool between like certain hours, like just as a precaution. Be like, hey, after evening prayers, just stay away from the motor pool until it gets dark. But once it was dark, everything calmed down. They're like, okay, do whatever you need to do.
Yeah,
we
you guys live down
memo.
there.
Yeah, we didn't get that memo. Yeah, I mean, there were some afternoons that, we were laying on our belly on the ground because bullets were just whizzing by so close.
That's crazy.
And it's important to note that the way that the motor pool sat on Sperwan Ghar, it was more exposed than most other places. It kind of was slanted down. It was on a lower portion of the base. So rounds that kind of would either flown over the top of our area or into a HESCO and other spots tended to somehow just land in the motor pool. It's just like this weird freak of the design of the place.
And I think it's probably like AOP just spraying and praying down at the checkpoint and just lobbing rounds, and those rounds would end up or when the Taliban would hit the checkpoint, there was like that cheeky mofo who would just lob a few rounds over into the American base, So he's just kind of getting an effort with his AK, and a few of those always ended up in the motor pool. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly how those bullets always landed in the motor pool. It's just, the angle of the bullet, and just what they were shooting at and the area.
And kind of where you guys were laid out. It was just weird because it wasn't something that we really had to worry too much about on the rest of the base. Yeah, definitely not at the schoolhouse for sure.
Oh yeah.
Now, at one point during the deployment, and this is one thing that we forgot to talk about in the pre-interview, but I want to hear the story because it's pretty epic. Did you roll a crane off of the side of Sperwan Ghar, or were you on a crane that rolled off the side of Sperwan Ghar? Not that it was your fault, but...
That wasn't necessarily me doing that, but... so what had happened was... so we had that old crane, and that crane was actually contracted out to Sperwan Ghar. And it didn't belong to us, so the guy that was always driving it, he was hired to use it on Sperwan Ghar, which is one of the locals. So... on top of the hill, we had one of them old, I think it might have been an old camera on a pole. I don't know what it was called.
Yeah, the RAID camera.
Yeah, but pretty much they wanted it back. I don't know if it was the contract had ran out on it, but somebody wanted it back, so we had to get it off the top of the hill.
Oh, geez.
And, so the only way to get it off the top of the hill was take the crane up there, pick it up, then... bring it over so we could drive a vehicle up there to pull it back down the hill. Well, that crane was a crappy crane, and he didn't have enough power to make it up the hill, so I had to hook the bulldozer up to the crane and drag it up the hill.
Oh my God, this is man, there's so many safety briefs involved.
Oh my geez, yeah. So, and this crane barely fit on the road going up that hill, so we had to really hug the inside of the hill. And so anyways, we got it up there, we got the camera over where we needed it, and I told him, I'm like, look, you don't do anything but steer the vehicle. You're going to use me as the brakes. And so that's pretty much so we didn't get any slack or anything in the chain.
Yeah.
And I was using some pretty big chains. I was using some 5/8 inch chains. And anyways, we were going back down the hill, and he kept on, for some reason, like putting the vehicle in drive and coming forward to readjust where it was at on the hill. I kept on telling him, don't do that, because, we don't need to get slack in these chains and break the chains. Well, sure enough, he kept on doing it. And he pretty much drove all the way to the back of the bulldozer for some reason. And all of a sudden, his crane, the vehicle engine cut off. Well, sure enough, when it cut off, when that thing started rolling back, all that slack in the chain came out. Well, it broke the chain. And when it broke the chain, the crane started rolling off the back of the hill. And I'm talking about at the very last second, this guy jumps out of that crane. And it rolls probably a good 4 or 5 times down the hill.
Really?
So, yeah. So come to find out, his brakes didn't even work. Didn't even have brakes on that. So when he was driving up, he didn't have no brakes, to keep the slack out of the chains. So, that could have been worse. I mean, the dude didn't get killed. Scared him. But, yeah.
See, the story we heard was that it was you that jumped out at the last second. No, I had pulled him up the hill and was, being his brakes for when he was going back down the hill. But no, I wasn't in the crane. Good Lord, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that the chain broke and you didn't get pulled down the freaking mountainside by a crane. God.
Yeah, if we would have been probably another 20 foot up that hill, that crane would have rolled down on top of the building where the A&A was staying.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it could have been way worse than
a rough day.
Yeah, it would have been bad.
Oh, jeez.
That's the nature of being deployed, man. That's that's one of the things that gets overlooked a lot because you always talk about the firefights and the IED strikes, but you forget about those random moments of just having to make do with what you got at hand.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, we got a shitty crane that doesn't have brakes, driven by some random Afghan dude. I guess we'll pull it up the mountain with a bulldozer. That's just, you got to, adapt to circumstances.
Oh, yeah, if we were in
I'll tell you, that
Garrison,
bulldozer adapted.
Man,
that bulldozer did so much work in Afghanistan.
Man,
it should have earned its own meritorious service medal because man, it built roads, it recovered vehicles, it built checkpoints, it knocked down orchards, it did deforestation projects, it did poppy elimination. Like, what didn't you do with that bulldozer?
I didn't win the global war on terrorism.
Are you sure?
But we tried.
What brand was that thing anyways? Was it a Caterpillar or John Deere or something?
Man, I don't even know. The warranty ran out on that thing in 1989.
It was an antique, man.
Yeah. It was missing armor.
I'll tell you what, they built that thing up. That thing, like the armored crew compartment was pretty freaking impressive. And that was like the one vehicle you could not get stuck. Everything else got stuck. But man, you could just drive that plow through a grape row with that thing like it wasn't even there.
Yeah. Well, that was my biggest concerns when we did go out with the bulldozer, was getting it stuck. Because, if we would have got that thing stuck, we would have been out there for days waiting on something to come from Kandahar to get us out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
That was my biggest concern, is don't get the bulldozer stuck.
And we did, like, 2 times that I know of, we got it stuck. Once was in Najat.
Yep.
We got it stuck. And then the second time was the day we're going to talk about here in a couple minutes. But that wasn't really stuck. It got blown up.
Yeah.
So it was not a fault of the terrain, really. It was more of a fault of enemy fire. But yeah, I mean, I've always said that if we really cared about winning the war in Panjwai, we just would get in every infantryman their own bulldozer, and there'd be nowhere that we couldn't have gone.
Oh yeah. Well, there would have been nothing left to hide behind. I can tell you that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Every fighting position in Panjwai would have been plowed through with bulldozer.
Oh yeah.
Open ID,
when they heard that,
whatever.
Yeah. When they heard that thing coming, they knew something was getting destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did not like that thing.
No.
Not at all.
No, it was slow. It was loud.
Mm-hmm. It was a target. They shot at it a
big
lot.
target.
Well, I remember, but when you guys plowed that road to go pull the Minotaur out, like if we
Yeah.
didn't have a bulldozer, I don't know what we would have done. Like there was no other way to
Yeah.
pull that thing out. Like you literally bulldozed a kilometer-long road just to pull that little remote control Bobcat out.
Yeah, that Minotaur, that was a bad idea. that idea wasn't thought through.
No.
No.
It was thought about 30% of the way through. They're like, it'd be really cool if we had a portable mine roller. Yeah, that's a really good idea. But then they didn't think about the second half. It's like, what if our thing that's supposed to hit IEDs actually hits an IED?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I guess we have to bring it back.
Well, we
How
cover
do we
it.
bring it?
Yeah.
We'll recover it. With
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, well, I mean,
You can,
even when
that's why we do deadlifts.
even when
Sir, that's why we do deadlifts, if you're listening.
There's a throw out to Captain Kitching, who, to his credit, I don't think he understood how big the Minotaur was, but when they first told him that they had, then when they rolled it into the stream, he's like, well, just get like 6 guys down there and deadlift it out. They're like, sir, this thing is 8,000 pounds. One of the classic Kitching quotes of the deployment. Mm-hmm. But I guess we can transition into talking about September 20th, which is when the bulldozer really showed its durability. Mm-hmm. So what was actually, because that whole thing started on the 19th for you, right? The day before?
Yeah, was that so we had gone out, and right there beside that checkpoint we built, there was an orchard.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to clear all the trees out of that orchard because they were pretty much, the Taliban was using that orchard to sneak up on that checkpoint. So we went out that afternoon and knocked down all the trees. The next morning we had to come out, and the mud wall that was around that orchard, we had to tear that mud wall down. And we had been tearing it down for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, and got to probably about the last 10 foot of that wall, and yep, there went a boom. So that's when I hit an IED right there. It's the last 10 foot of 10 foot of that wall.
Do you think you pushed the wall over onto the IED and it blew up, or do you think you hit it with the bulldozer?
No, so what I had learned out in that area was if I kept my blade about 6 inches in the ground, then if I, came across a pressure plate, most of the time I wouldn't set the pressure plate off, but I would slide it enough to where it would disconnect from the IED itself. So I would always do that. I always kept my bucket under the ground for that reason. And I would always keep dirt pushed up in front of me. So if I did hit IED, that dirt would muffle it. Mm-hmm. And
that's really smart thinking. Man.
Yeah, it's good thinking, man.
Yeah, you learn little things to keep yourself alive out there. But I think that's what set it off. But it was an anti-personnel IED. It wasn't nothing big. I think after that went off, I think I opened the door and I yelled at y'all, "Hey, I found one." But yeah, so that didn't really mess the bulldozer up that much. Really, it just kicked up a lot of dust, if anything.
Yeah. And if memory serves me, that wasn't the first time you hit an IED with the bulldozer. Like you had been in pretty close proximity, either knocking the wall onto one or something like that in the past, right?
Yeah, I had set some IEDs off, knocking down a wall or just pushing dirt up. But in that AO, I wasn't really concerned about big IEDs. I was like I said, I was more concerned about getting that thing stuck than hitting an IED that would hurt it. Mm-hmm. So we got the wall knocked down. And I think we were starting to leave. And was it Lieutenant Kohler y'all had?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lieutenant Kohler's like, hey, we got to knock down this roll of trees before we leave. And it's like, all right, cool. So I started knocking down that roll of trees. And the last tree I had to knock down was this. It was a huge tree. I mean, this thing was probably about 3 foot in diameter. And
Wow.
yeah, in Afghanistan, that's a very old, tough
It's
tree.
unusual, yeah.
Yeah. So, matter of fact, the bulldozer wouldn't even push it over. I had to back up, and I would get like a running start to kind of, hit it with the bulldozer. And the tree still wasn't moving. So, probably about the third time I rammed that tree, all of a sudden, I mean, it was just this bright light, a lot of heat, and I was sitting in the floorboard of the bulldozer. And I remember looking up, and my ballistic windows were still orange from the heat of the explosion.
Whoa.
And and I looked up, and there were all the leaves in that tree had been blown out. And the first thing I was thinking was, why would they put an IED right there? Because that tree was a good 10 foot off the trail. And I was sitting there. I was kind of slow at the time, and I was just sitting there and just trying to figure out why an IED would be right there. But I finally came to my senses and was like, okay, I gotta get up and I gotta get out of this bulldozer, because it was smoking. It was sparks going everywhere. And so I got out of the bulldozer, and Sergeant Ott was like, hey, we got to get you out of here. That's 2 explosives within 30 minutes. So they casevac'd me out. But
They also disabled the bulldozer as well, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, that bulldozer, it was done. And, come to find out, we all learned later on that afternoon that it was an RPG that hit the bulldozer. And, I was very lucky, because that bulldozer was missing armor on the side that the RPG hit. If that RPG would have been 6 inches higher, it would have came straight in the cab of that bulldozer. So, So I got very lucky on that one.
Yeah, and that was it was fairly unusual for us to run into RPGs.
Yeah, I
on
can only
that
think
deployment.
of
It happened
3 or 4 times that we actually got RPG shot at us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't a lot of them. I just don't think they had a ton of them.
Yeah.
And it's just a hard weapon to employ in that area, because you need line of sight and they don't fly straight. Which was why it was exceptional that they hit you.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, later that day, what I would presume to be the same RPG team hit the vehicle in which Staff Sergeant Swindle was riding, and unfortunately, he lost his life that day.
Yep. That was a rough day for us.
Yeah. And it was just we talk a lot about the difference in inches and the proximity and chance, and the specific set of circumstances that had to lead up to something like that happening. It was just so unpredictable. And who knew that they had that many RPGs? They hadn't really shown a willingness to use them before. We didn't have a whole lot of apprehension about staging trucks out on the road as a result, and they were there and they had to use them. So unfortunately, that was.
I think the one that hit me was a different RPG than the one that hit the Matt V. Sergeant Swindle was in. I'm pretty sure the one that hit the Matt V was an armor piercing RPG. And the one that hit my bulldozer, I don't think it was armor piercing, because it was almost like the bulldozer had been shot by a shotgun with buckshot in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was a lot of, inside of my metal hoses, there was a lot of little round, like buckshot hit it. So, So I think they used
an airburst, because I remember we talked to Sergeant Ho about it in his interview, And he's like, yeah, it exploded right next to it. Or like it hit like on the corner of the thing. I think it was definitely a designed to explode before the target. Kind of like that's how they use them to shoot down helicopters. Is they I don't know I don't know if it dials like a Gustav round does or whatnot. How they set the airburst, but basically they set an airburst, and that's what it was. That's what I think at least.
Yeah, I mean it could have been, but yeah, it was a rough day.
Now you didn't have to drive the other bulldozer, right? You were done for the day.
Yeah, no, I was done for the day. I went to see the medics just to check me out. Then 123 happened to have another bulldozer that they sent over to us. And that day I sent Specialist Lowry out to finish that mission. So, yeah, I was done for the day.
Now you guys were primarily track vehicle mechanics, with you being the exception. You were the only wheeled vehicle mechanic on the rest of the mechanics team. Was it difficult kind of transitioning them over to work on the MATVs and the vehicles like that?
You know, I had Sergeant Huggins, I had Specialist McGuigan, Lowry, Vera, and Toussaint. And them guys, you know, they were on top of their game. Sergeant Huggins, you know, he knew his job. He just knew mechanicking in general. So, you know, there was a couple of like maybe some detailed things that I would have to show them. But overall, you know, them guys, they had the motor pool under control. You know, they were on top. They were on top of it.
Now, you guys supported a variety of missions in addition to your normal day-to-day job as a mechanic. So I guess before we go into some of the other stuff you did, what was like kind of your normal day-to-day routine or week-to-week routine down in the motor pool? And then we'll go into some of the crazy, more of the crazy stuff that you guys found yourselves wrapped up into.
So really, we couldn't really fix anything too big because, you know, we didn't really have the tools. Getting parts there was a nightmare. So, I mean, mechanical wise, you know, we didn't really have to fix a lot of things.
Right.
So really, a day for us was, you know, we'd wake up. Most of the time there was somebody down there needing our help to try to fix something.
Right.
And, you know, if it was something small, we could fix it. If not, then, you know, we'd have to look up the part. Then Toussaint would have to order it from Kandahar.
Right.
So, I mean, basically that was a day for us. It wasn't nothing too crazy. Because we didn't really use the vehicles a lot, too, so.
No, they got pretty minimal use, and when they did get used, it wasn't for very long periods of time. If anything, they spent an excessive amount of time idling.
Yeah, yep.
And as I understand it, air conditioning was not a priority repair.
It wasn't that. It's just, like I said, the tools we needed to put Freon in them, we just couldn't get. I mean, we wasn't set up to work on things. You know, if it was something big, we had to send the whole vehicle to Kandahar.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, it's also worth mentioning a lot of the systems in those vehicles were under contract. So like the Crow systems and some of the weapon stuff, the cameras, there's a lot in those vehicles that you guys probably even technically could have fixed, but you weren't allowed to touch. Is that?
Yeah, that's spot on. Like, yeah, especially the Crow system. Like, we could kind of troubleshoot them and take a guess of what we thought it was, but you know, that was another system that we just didn't have the tools to fix.
And it wasn't practical for us to go to Kandahar every time we had a air conditioner go out or a Crow system go down. And sometimes it's like, hey, Crow's down on that vehicle. We don't have a Crow.
Yep.
You know, it was just the way that it was. Which more times than I care to admit that we went outside the wire without a working weapon system, just because that's what we had to do. You know, I don't know what the requirements for a platoon were, but I know for sure it wasn't that every weapon system worked, because I don't think it ever was the case.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and even when we did have to send things to Kandahar, we had to send it to Zengabad first, have it go through 123, then 123 would send it to Kandahar, somebody from 123 would pick it up, then they would take it to wherever shop it needed to be fixed.
Oh,
so,
really? Okay.
Yeah, so there was a lot of different hands that our equipment went through before it was fixed.
Yeah. And I'm guessing the turnaround had to have been ridiculous before you finally got something back.
Yeah, it was crazy. Well, most of the time, we couldn't find our equipment. We'd send a mine hound over, or a weapon, or an optic, and Lieutenant Boss would call, and nobody would know where that equipment's at.
Jeez.
We spent more time hunting down our equipment than anything. Which, it wasn't nobody's fault. It was just a lot of...
it's war. Well, it's somebody's fault. Maintaining accountability of equipment is a fairly simple job that somebody should be doing properly. But it is war, and shit happens, and priorities shift. Someone's priority one day could be maintaining accountability of all the SI in the repair shop, and the next day, like, hey, you're going on a convoy. Like, then they're going on a convoy, and that's their job. And then if something happens to them, then now no one knows accountability. So I get it, but at the same time, come on, Army. Like, you have computers. Like, this shouldn't be hard.
Yep.
So that's what you're supposed to be doing, or that's what your day-to-day is. But, what are some of the other projects you guys kind of got tasked out for?
We didn't really get tasked out a lot. Every now and then, we would go over to a different fob to, pick up parts, or, things like that. Now, we did have a wrecker out there that we didn't really use that much, but that was another thing that the mechanics were responsible for.
Right. I think I used a few times. Mostly just recovering IED blasts.
Yeah.
So I know they recovered ours out on the road, and...
Yeah, we did, but, the wrecker we had was not set up for off-road use. That thing would get stuck on wet grass. No lie. So, really, if we had to recover something that was off a really hard-packed road, then we couldn't do it with that wrecker. We had to send a bulldozer out to drag it to a spot to hook to.
Yeah. Yet another use of the wonderful bulldozer.
Another use, yeah.
But so you guys also, you helped on a couple occasions. I know we talked about the Route Brown checkpoint, but also you built a couple other ones. One of them with the same SFODA, and you got into a pretty good gunfight out there, kind of where we ended up doing Operation Throat Chop. And then also there was another mission with the SEALs and Afghan police. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so towards the end of our deployment, right there, the first checkpoint we had built off of Route Brown, we started building another checkpoint. Gosh, it probably wasn't even...
It wasn't
maybe
far.
100 yards. Yeah, it wasn't far at all. But because it took us so long to build the other two, somebody, I guess, got smart and flew in some Navy SEALs and some Afghan commandos to pull security for us. And but yeah, they did a real good job of pulling security for us, of course. And we got that checkpoint put up pretty quickly.
Yeah. It was a smaller one too. You kind of like built it into an existing compound, right?
Yeah, it was probably, I don't know, maybe by a 50 by 50 checkpoint.
It's pretty small, yeah.
Yeah, because that one was built off a walking trail.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I remember we accidentally came across that on a patrol once, and we had heard something about a checkpoint being built, but then we randomly saw it. We're like, that's what they built? Like, it was so out of the way and incognito and, like, just hidden. Like, I think someone almost shot somebody because they saw somebody with a weapon inside the checkpoint. Like, wait, no, that's a checkpoint.
That one,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a small one. It only took, like, I want to say 3 days to build. Maybe not even that. So it was small.
Do y'all take any contact while you were putting that one together?
For myself and the Special Forces guys, Nothing too serious. I mean, the SEALs and the commandos, they did a pretty good job of keeping a distance from, I guess the Taliban and the checkpoint. So they were out in firefights a good bit, but us inside the checkpoint wasn't.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't this the mission where they threw up an American flag and they were
called out the Taliban on the loudspeakers and all that stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they could have been. Like I said, most of the time when I was in the bulldozer, I don't hear nothing. I really don't see what's going on outside of it. So they could have. I'm not aware of it.
I think it would have been at night when they were doing that.
Yeah, I wasn't there with them at night because I would go in and refuel and get ready for the next day.
Did the bulldozer stay down there and you just got transported down to the bulldozer, or did you have to drive it back to the COP every day?
I would drive it back to the COP every day.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's funny. That's chug-a-lugging along down Route Brown, waiting for that RPG to come skipping across the hood of your bulldozer.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well...
And this was after you got RPG'd, right?
No, this was all before. Pretty much after I got RPG'd, I mean, our bulldozer missions were almost up. And that's when we started... Instead of bulldozing tree lines, that's when they started bombing tree lines.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, General Petraeus. Or General Abrams. I'm so sorry. Thank you, General Abrams.
Yeah, so that's when they started dropping them J-dams.
Yeah.
Which I'm okay with.
Oh, I'm down.
Yeah.
It was a good show that night.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it was... that bulldozer, it was very valuable to us. And, heck, most of the time when I was out using the bulldozer, we'd be in firefights. And I didn't even know we were in firefights. Didn't even know one
was kicking off.
Yeah, we had to cut a road from Route Brown going towards Najat one day. And I never looked off to the left side of my bulldozer. Always looked to the front, to the right, because that's where all my controls were, and I would look to the back. Well, we were cutting that road that day, and you know how a rock hits your windshield when you're going down the road? I kept on hearing that. Well, I couldn't figure out what it was. Kept on hearing it, and I'm like, all right, what is this? So I finally stopped.
762.
Yeah, shut the bulldozer off, and I think it was 2nd Platoon. Their Max Pro and a couple of Mat Vs. I mean, they were just, their crow systems were going to town. We had been in a firefight and I didn't even know it. and that's when I looked over at my glass, and my glass was all spider webbed. And it was 7.62s hitting it.
Just rocking it. Oh,
just rocking it, yeah.
Jesus, man.
Yep.
That's crazy. So, I mean, that's one of the things I think was unique for you guys as mechanics, and especially you, because you were out there like leading the charge on a lot of those duties, and the bulldozer driving was just like the wildness of that deployment for you guys. Like, how did the 2012 deployment compare to the 2006 deployment? Not in like comparative as in, what was worse or whatever, just like what was the differences and how are they similar and things like that for you in your experience?
Well, I guess I can start off with a difference. The enemy we were fighting in Iraq, they had way more resources. A 250-pound, a 500-pound IED, that was common. That was daily. And even, heck, we started running into the EFPs? Yep, and we started running into them. And, that was just, they had resources like no other. Then in Afghanistan, it seemed like the Taliban had less resources, but they were smarter on how to use those resources. The similar things, I don't know, they both suck. It always tell everybody it's the best, worst times of your life. So,
right.
Yeah.
you always go and you see people get killed. It's just that starts beating down on you.
Yeah.
For sure, man. For sure.
Now, for your guys, for a lot of them, this was their first deployment, right?
Sergeant Huggins and I think Lowry had been deployed to Iraq before.
Sure.
But the rest of them, this was their first deployment.
And how did you kind of approach leading them with the expectation, like, this is not going to be just sitting in the motor pool fixing, like, we're going to be doing more, we're going to be filling in for these infantry guys? I mean, I'm sure that's not something that had even really crossed their mind. I mean, were they pretty receptive to that? Did you have, were they scared? How did that kind of play out?
No, so Sergeant Huggin and I'm gonna call him his team of mechanics. They were some pretty smart guys. They were good. They had common sense, so they knew the deal. They knew to go out there, pay attention to what the other persons around you are doing, and just be aware. And they did that. They knew what they were getting into. So I just had to, days they were down, give them a pep talk, or just hey, it's what we're here for. It's what you signed up to do, so we got to do it and think about it later.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's one of the critical parts about this deployment for us, and I'm sure it's the same with most people's deployments, is that the role of the support personnel, especially when you're talking these small bases, when the infantry's out, they are driving trucks, they're gunning trucks, they are out there on dismounted patrols, they're carrying stuff, as an extra person, just because we need extra people. And especially the longer that deployment goes on and the fewer people that we have, that job becomes way more important. And I feel like that gets overlooked a lot. And that's why we're really glad we have you on, because it's a really important part of our deployment was just how often that happened, man.
It happened a lot. And we were fortunate to have reliable dudes in that position. Like now, it's not always, it's kind of a mixed bag, just like any other job. Some guys are pieces of shit, and then some are super squared away. And I feel like on our support personnel, for the most part, we were very, very fortunate, and then everybody's squared away and ready to go.
Yeah, we had a good team to support y'all. I mean, even for the cooks, them guys. I mean, Dango Hoxie was even going out getting in firefights, and
well, he was shooting
at
us.
But but to him, he was in a firefight shooting the bad guys. But
he was in a firefight.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, he was.
He was.
No,
that was Miguel and Tom Evans.
Man, that day,
yeah, man.
I think I came up off a mission and somebody was like, "Hey, sir, you need to talk to Hoxie." I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" He about killed all of us. And I'm like, "What do you mean he about killed all of us?" I guess y'all were walking back to the vehicles and he just starts shooting with a 240, something like that.
No, we were on top of a grape hut.
Yeah, up on a grape hut, and it was shit was going down, and Hoxie just started laying down. To his credit, he started laying down Scunion on the 50. Right?
Yeah,
it was a fucking 50 cal.
They were getting shot at too. He just made an easy mistake. Yeah. And in future engagements, he shot in the right direction. Shit, I know for a fact I shot at our third squad at one point, so it happens.
I hope Hoxie's watching this. We love you, Hoxie.
I hope so too. We do. We're gonna have you on to talk about shrimp scampi, though.
Shrimp scampi, yeah. You've ruined shrimp scampi for me, Hoxie. Thanks, man.
Forever. I can't do it. But I mean,
we were in a unique position there.
Yeah.
The collection dudes were good, and they contributed to the fight, literally, in some cases.
Literally. I mean, Minotaur down. We stuffed vehicles with armorers, support personnel, cooks, mechanics. We just grabbed people like, hey, you're gunning the truck. You're gonna walk down and help us pull Boyce out. Like, everyone pulled their weight. Everyone was expected to pull their weight. And if they didn't pull their weight, they didn't hang around for very long.
That's
Oh
true.
yeah, that's very true.
Very true.
Yep, spot on.
And I think I'm pretty sure I'm accurate in saying this. Every single person on COP Sperwan Ghar, every person had a cab or a CIB. All of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is probably
everybody
unusual.
should have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be unusual. I mean, obviously, you say a lot of things with exceptions, like, in the Korengal, where literally their base is at the bottom of a mountain, they're getting shot at every day. Yeah, everyone's getting a cab and a CIB there too. But, Sperwan Ghar was a big base. We had a lot of people. There were a lot of people who had jobs in which they probably never thought they'd ever have to go outside the wire for. And mechanics, the cooks, our intel guys all got into it.
Yeah.
And we're super appreciative that we had the support from you guys, both on the base and that you guys were like, hey, you need an extra guy? I'll go out with you. So
Oh yeah.
we appreciate that for sure.
I mean, that's the thing, man, is, John's a great example of that. As he walks away, he's got as many, if not more, close calls than all the dudes on the ground, just because he was driving that fucking bulldozer. It's like a bullet magnet.
Yep.
And the fact
the
that you
thing is,
took the
we asked
RPG
these
round
guys
to the
to-
cab, and you could
yeah.
see the heat melting off the glass. That's intense, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No, that one rocked my dome that day.
Oh, yeah. I
Sure it
believe
did.
That one definitely made the eyes cross.
Yeah, I'm sure it did, man. It's crazy.
Well, I know, John, when we did the pre-interview, you said one thing you really want to talk about was the stigma of mental health.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we had a really good conversation, and I want to continue that conversation because you and I have a few things in common in that category, and that we both reached a point in our professional careers as a soldier where we realized that we had things unresolved, and that it was best for us and for the people that we worked for in our command to make sure that got addressed. So the floor is yours here on this topic,
Yes.
and we'll chime in with you, but I want you to kind of guide it because I know it's something you're passionate about.
Yep. So, at this point of, what are we, 20 years at war now?
Mm-hmm.
We've heard mental health. Go get help. There's help there. It's just repetitive at this point. But, man, I'll tell you, mental health, it sneaks up on you. It puts you in not a good place. Like, you cannot fight that war by yourself. And, I try to fight it for over 9 years by myself. And, it got to the point it's just like, man, I'm depressed all the time. I'm in isolation. I don't talk to my family. I don't talk to my friends. It's a bad place to be in. And it got to the point where I finally had to be honest with myself and notice, hey, there's something wrong here. Like they say, they say asking for help is the hardest thing. But for me, it was being honest with myself and, then going and ask for help.
Yeah.
But, so I don't care how big and bad you are, how tough you think you are, go get help because you can't fight that war by yourself. But I do want to share a couple of things that I just got out of 7 weeks of therapy, and I would like to share something that helped me get through therapy. And, I'm not one that preaches to people, but, I see some Bible verses throughout my career that soldiers have tattooed on themselves, and they're pretty popular. But there's one that was introduced to me when I was in therapy that I think is more important than the popular Bible verses that we see soldiers talk about. So,
Sure.
the first verse that I want to talk about is Isaiah 6:8. And Isaiah 6:8 says, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, who shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me. We've heard that. A lot of soldiers tend to put that verse of, hey, I joined the military. I'm ready to serve for my country. Send me. So that's a popular. Then another popular one I see is Psalms 144:1, and that's it says, "Praise to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle." Like I said, that's another one that soldiers relate to. I'm in combat, or I'm getting ready for combat. Give me strength. Now the third Bible verse I want to share with everybody. And I have yet to see anybody with this one tattooed on them. But for me, I wish I would have seen this Bible verse a long time ago. And I hope I don't mess up the wording of this one, because it's one of the harder verses, or the harder ones to say. And it's Ecclesiastes. There we go. There you go. There we go.
Bible school. What's up?
Bible school. So this book talks about everything under heaven. There's a season, and it goes on to say there's a time to be born, and there's a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. All right. Now this next one, there's a time to kill, and there's a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. Then it goes on to say, there's a time to love, and a time to hate, and a time of war, and a time of peace. Now, that, where it says there's a time to kill, and there's a time to heal, for me in mental health, that told me that I need to let go of everything that happened during deployments. I don't need to be in that mindset of killing and, destroying everything. I need to start getting in the mindset of healing and building myself back up.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, you can't be in that mindset anymore when you're not deployed. You gotta give everything a break. You gotta build it back up.
It's tough for guys. A lot of guys, there were kind of like two phases in the war. There was one where you're deploying every 12 months, and you don't get that time to heal in between. You're coming off the next deployment, and you're training for the next one. And that was a necessity of the times, but also a disservice by the Army to not look out for its soldiers and be like, hey, they don't just need 12 months off to decompress from the last deployment. They also need time to get better and get prepared before the next time they go out. Instead of a 1-to-1, it probably should have been like a 1-to-2, like 2 months of dwell time for every 1 month deployed kind of thing. And they, we learned our lesson to some extent, and they're getting a lot better about that. But, now here we are, people aren't getting deployments, and people can't let go, like you said. They can't let go of the time that they were in Sperwan Ghar, their time at Panjwai, or the time when they were in the shit with their buddies, and they continue to seek it out because it's not happening anymore. There are no more deployments, and they can't let go. And to those guys, I would encourage you to let go. Letting go is the hardest thing.
It is, Yep. So, but yeah, no, please go get help. Like, don't fight it. You don't deserve it. Your family don't deserve it. Your friends don't deserve it. And when you're fighting mental health, you're not living life. You're just existing. And don't do that. Go live life.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, as someone who experienced it myself, you don't see the signs initially that something's wrong. You blame it on other things. For me, I became extremely irritable, angry. I never had an anger problem. I would get furious at the smallest, stupidest things. I would be unreasonable, impatient. And eventually, it bled over into the cockpit. And that's when the professional side was like, hey, I can't be like that in the aircraft. Like, it's not safe. It's putting me and other people at danger. I need to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And we just all need to kind of have the self-awareness to realize something's wrong, to take a step back, and let somebody else figure out what it is. Because I promise you can't do that. Like you said, you can't do that by yourself. Yep. You need someone else to do that for you.
Yep. And when I was in treatment, another thing that I had to realize is, I had to put the effort in. When I was there, they're not going to do no voodoo on me. They're not going to sprinkle holy water on me, and I was going to be okay. I had to learn that I had to put the effort in. And, you're going to have to suck up your pride and put the effort in, but it's worth it at the end.
Yeah, that's very true, because it all originates in the mind, so it ends in the mind. Yeah. And it's not, there's no outside force that can shape that. It's not a cast, that you can throw on your broken arm, or it's not a, Tylenol you can take for, a hurting brain or sore muscle or whatever. It is within itself. So that's where the healing has to start too.
That's how I was. I was just trying to hang in there until my 20-year retirement. Then after that I was going to go get help. But it got to the point where I was having to take more and more medicine during the daytime. And, it just got to the point I was taking so much medication that, I didn't even remember what I was doing the day before that morning. And, it just got to the point, it's just like, man, I need to go try this a little bit more natural.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, go get help.
And go get help. And, the stigma is going away. If you're still serving and you served in the war and you have shit going on, if you feel like your command is an impediment to you getting help, go straight to behavioral health. Bypass them. Fuck them. Like, seriously, fuck them. They have no ability to stop you from doing that. Behavioral health will talk to you that day. They will find a way to get you help, and then they will help you go through the proper channels to make it legit, like going through your provider and through your command and stuff like that. But if your command isn't supportive, fuck them. And then the first thing you need to do is find your way to another command, because you need to take care of yourself. Like, most of the commands now are really good about making sure that you're taken care of, because they recognize, like, they may not be able to have you on full capability for a few months, but if you get help, they got you for the rest of your career, because you're good and your head's right. Whereas if they stand in the way of it, you're just going to get out and you're going to be gone, and then you'll be another statistic to them. So go get help.
Yep.
Well, John, usually the way we end this is kind of giving you a chance to say what it is you want to say, but I think you kind of said it. But we'll give you one more chance. If there's anything else that you'd like to add before we close this thing out.
No, I'm just, glad to hear from you guys again. I think what y'all got going is a very good thing. When you asked me if I would come on here, I was scared. I was nervous, but I needed this. So, thank you for inviting me on here, and I support what y'all are doing.
Well, thank you for coming on. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
it's been eye-opening too, because it's been a nice reminder of the role that you poor bastards played, bulldozing Panjwai. We need to make a bulldozer T-shirt. I feel like
that's a good. I'd get behind that.
Yeah.
All
Tread
right,
on
John.
them.
Tread on them.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Panjwai Podcast. If you liked what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. New episodes every Monday on all major podcast platforms, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit www.thepanjwaipodcast.com for more information.